Our ancestors worshipped goddesses, but today, almost no one does. This is a video about why. There are many reasons why. Historic reasons, political reasons, technological reasons, which are complicated, but I teach evolutionary mythology, and the mythic reason for the goddess's absence today is very simple. She was murdered. She was brutally killed so that the god king could take his throne, a throne which, for billions of worshippers today, he still holds, unquestioned. And we know roughly when this murder occurred. 4,000 years ago, we were still telling stories of the desired goddess who would, in pleasure, proclaim her husband king. And 3,000 years ago, the story became about how the king needed to slay the goddess and her wicked monsters in order to secure his throne. And by 2,000 years ago, that murder was so thoroughly complete that we stopped telling stories about goddesses altogether. Monotheism won and spread over most of the world. My name is Dr. Teresa Kadish, and today we're going to look back to that transitional time, about 3,000 years ago, before monotheism, when the king of the universe was not yet so secure in his throne. He still had rivals, and he still had to prove his divine authority, and the goddess was still in his pantheon. But not for long, because in order to claim his title as Father on High, he had to stop treating his female counterpart as the mother of all and treat her instead as the dragon to be slain. In story after story from this time period, we read of sea serpents and bulls of heaven and guardians of the wild, which are all killed in our hero's quest for power. Comparative mythologists have a name for this species of story. They call it the Chaos Kampf, or the combat myth. There are versions from all over the world, but from a Jewish perspective, which is the tradition that I've inherited, the version of this story that had the biggest theological impact came from Babylon, and it's called the Enuma Elish, When on High. In this video, I'm going to retell that story. In the Torah, Babylon represents the city of the other. It is the place to which we were exiled around 586 BCE because we failed to follow Adonai's commandments. Like the murder of the goddess, the historical reasons for the Babylonian exile are complex, but the theological reasons are very simple. We failed to follow the commandments of our God King. The Torah says that we were worshiping foreign gods and false idols, and so the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem and made us strangers in his strange land. They turned to the service of other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they had not experienced and whom Adonai had not allotted to them. So Adonai was incensed at that land and brought upon it all the curses recorded in this book. Adonai uprooted them from their soil in anger, fury, and great wrath, and cast them into another land, as is still the case. And in that other land, we encountered Babylonian religion and mythology. For 70 years, Jewish priests lived as foreigners in the city of Babylon, and as each of those years gave way to the next, in the month of Nisan, a festival was celebrated, called Akitu by the locals, to commemorate the sowing of that year's barley and the coronation of their god king, Marduk. Over the 12-day festival, golden idols of gods across the empire were brought to Babylon and ritually made to bow low before Marduk, their supreme ruler. And on the 4th day of the festival, each new year, the high priest of Babylon would recite the entire Enuma Elish to the statue of Marduk where he was housed in the sacred core of his temple, the Isagila. Enuma Elish, the elder brother of Emusa, recites from its beginning until its end to Marduk. As long as he is reciting Enuma Elish to Marduk, the front of the crown of Anu and the seat of Enlil will remain covered. Our Jewish ancestors, of course, report completely rejecting this ritual. The Babylonians had stolen the Ark of the Covenant and the tablets of the law from Adonai's temple, sure, but they found no idols there that they could force to kneel to Marduk. For the 70 years of Babylonian captivity, we were resolute in our rejection of these foreign gods and their foreign practices. And yet, as we'll see when we read the Enuma Elish, Babylonian mythology nonetheless had an impact on Jewish theology. For example, throughout the ancient kingdom of Judah, archaeologists have excavated thousands of these icons of busty women, often identified as the wife of Adonai, the goddess Asherah. Their deposition in Judean soil begins in the 800s BCE and then abruptly stops in the layer of rubble created by the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem in 586. Jews would return from Babylon, but these female icons would not. And from that point forward, all references to Asherah worship cease. The goddess had been eliminated. There are no canonically Jewish stories about Asherah or any other goddess, but we can learn about her still by reading the myths of the peoples that ancient Jews were impacted by. Because at this exact same time in our history, the Babylonians were ritually killing their mother goddess year upon year in the service of their royal ideology. So with that preamble, let's now read the Enuma Elish and learn in vivid detail how the goddess was murdered. I will warn you that this story contains hyperbolic expressions of misogyny and violence against women. The Enuma Elish is, of course, mythology, so it describes everything cosmically, including murder. This is not an easy myth. But if there were ever a smoking gun of the patriarchy, a specific artifact we could point to and say, here, this is where male domination began, it would be the Enuma Elish. Of course, historically, patriarchy evolved gradually over thousands of years into the set of institutions we see today, but mythically, patriarchy was created all at once in a cosmic battle between the god-king Marduk and his mother goddess Tiamat over the heart of Babylon. And maybe, if we recall that mythic battle, we'll be able to better respond to the tyrants of our own time. Let's begin. When on high no name was given to heaven, nor below was the netherworld called by name, our story begins with a prologue, which describes how the world was created. When on high no name was given to heaven, nor below was the netherworld called by name, primeval Apsu was their progenitor, and matrix Tiamat was she who bore them all. They were mingling their waters together. So the story begins with two primeval deities, one male, one female, who are mingling their waters together. This, of course, means they're having sex, but it's also a literal image for what Babylonians would have seen from their estuaries at the top of the Persian Gulf, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers met the sea. The name Apsu translates to deep water. He was the male river flowing into Tiamat, the sea. The name Tiamat means the deep. It's an Akkadian cognate to the Hebrew word tehom, which shows up in the analogous passage from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. When Adonai began creating heaven and earth, the earth was void and desolate. There was darkness on the face of the deep. Here, the deep, tehom in Hebrew, the lack of the definite article ha in front of this word, it's not ha-tehom, indicates that for the writer of this passage, the deep was a proper noun, more like a formal name, more like Tiamat, and less like an adjective describing water. Names are very important in this myth. The Enuma Elish concludes with a hymn reciting the 50 names of Marduk, which is in direct contrast to the beginning of this story where there were no names. When no gods at all had been brought forth, nor called by names, none destinies ordained, then were the gods formed within these two. So the waters of Tiamat and Apsu mingle, and outpours a genealogy of gods. I'm going to draw their family tree for you, but you don't need to worry too much about keeping track of these names. The important thing to note is that it's a cast of fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers, stretching back to Apsu and Tiamat. Lamu and Lachmu were brought forth, were called by name. When they had waxed great, had grown up tall, Anshar and Kishar were formed, greater than they. They grew lengthy of days, added years to years. Anu, their firstborn, was like his forebears. Anshar made Anu his offspring, his equal. All these gods play minor roles in the story, but the most important son yet comes next. Then, Anu begot his own equal, Nudimmud Ea. Ea Nudimmud was he who dominated his forebears, profound in wisdom, acute of sense. He was massively strong, much mightier than his grandfather Anshar. No rival had he among the gods, his brethren. Our story really begins with Ea, also known as Nudimmud, also known as Enki, and what he does next: kill his great-great-grandfather Apsu. It starts off innocently. The gods get together and start making noise. The divine brethren banded together, confusing Tiamat as they moved about in their stir, roiling the vitals of Tiamat by their uproar, distressing the interior of the heavenly abode. This introduction is strongly reminiscent of the Akkadian flood myth, clamor being the reason for death. I've put a link in the description to my video about the flood myth below. You can think of the Enuma Elish as a politicized offspring of that older story, modified to support the royal ideology of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. In both stories, the male god is bothered by the clamor. He can't sleep and wants to kill his children, while the female goddess thinks that they should not be killed, for now at least. Apsu could not reduce their clamor, but Tiamat was silent before them. Their actions were noisome to her. Their behavior was offensive, but she was indulgent. Apsu made ready to speak, saying to her, Tiamat, in a loud voice, "Their behavior is noisome to me. By day I have no rest. At night I do not sleep. I wish to put an end to their behavior, to do away with it. Let silence reign, that we may sleep." From the context and previous versions of this story, we know this means that Apsu wants to kill them all. In the flood myth, the goddess protests at this point, and so that's what happens in the Enuma Elish too. For now, when Tiamat heard this, she grew angry and cried out to her spouse. She cried out bitterly, outraged that she stood alone, for he had urged evil upon her. "What? Shall we put an end to what we created? Their behavior may be most noisome, but we should bear it, in good part." The other gods overhear and become worried. They decide that if Apsu wants to kill them, they should kill him first. Whatever they plotted between them was repeated to the gods, their offspring. The gods heard it as they stirred about. They were stunned. They sat down in silence. Hearing of his great-great-grandfather's animosity, Ea comes up with a master plan. Surpassing in wisdom, ingenious, resourceful, Ea was aware of all, discerned their stratagem. He fashioned it, he established it, a master plan. Ea's plan is to cast a sleeping spell on Apsu. While he is sleeping, Ea will murder him. He made it artful, his superb magic spell. He recited it and brought him, Apsu, to rest in the waters. Ea put Apsu in deep slumber. He was fast asleep. Ea made Apsu sleep. He was drenched with slumber. Once Apsu is asleep, Ea steals his royal garments and kills him. He untied his stash. He stripped off his tiara. He took away his aura. He himself put it on. He tied up Apsu. He killed him. After Apsu has been killed, Ea uses his body to build himself a temple, a house sanctuary. This is highly typical behavior for a conquering god, and we will see victorious temple building several times in this version of the combat myth. After Ea had captured and vanquished his foes, had won the victory over his opponents, in his chamber, in profound quiet, he rested. He called it Apsu. They recognize sanctuaries. He established therein his chamber. Ea and Damkina his wife dwelt there, in splendor. So to summarize this prologue, Tiamat and Apsu were there before creation began. They mingled their waters and created several generations of gods. The gods are noisy, and Apsu complains he can't sleep and wants to kill them. Tiamat disagrees. The other gods hear their arguments and decide a preemptive strike is necessary. Ea kills Apsu, builds a chamber for himself and his wife out of Apsu's body, and moves in. There they have sex and give birth to our story's main character, Bel Marduk. In the cella of destinies, the abode of designs, the most capable, the sage of the gods, Bel, the Lord, was begotten. In the midst of Apsu, Marduk was formed. In the midst of holy Apsu was Marduk formed. Ea, his father, begot him. Damkina, his mother, was confined with him. He suckled at the breasts of goddesses. Marduk is described as magnificent, fiery, heroically mighty. All of his forefathers are pleased. His body was magnificent, fiery his glance. He was a hero at birth. He was a mighty one from the beginning. When Anu, his grandfather, saw him, he was happy. He beamed. His heart was filled with joy. Marduk is described using many epithets. Most emphasize his physical strength, but some are also evocative of the incomprehensible fire that we see later used for the Jewish god Adonai. His members were fashioned with cunning beyond comprehension, impossible to conceive, too difficult to visualize. When he moved his lips, a fire broke out. Marduk then immediately does what all of the other gods have done: bother his great-great-grandmother. He blows dust in her face. Anu formed and produced the 4 winds. He put them in his hand. Let my son play. He fashioned dust. He made a storm bear it up. He caused a wave, and it roiled Tiamat. Tiamat was roiled, churning day and night. The gods, finding no rest, bore the brunt of each wind. Many of the gods are bothered by Marduk's wind play and tell Tiamat she should do something about it. Kids these days, you know? They plotted evil in their hearts. They said to Tiamat, their mother, "When he killed Apsu, your husband, you did nothing to save him, but sat by silent. Now he has made 4 terrible winds. They're roiling your vitals, so we cannot sleep. You had no care for Apsu, your husband. Now you churn back and forth confused. As for us, who cannot lie down to rest, you do not love us." Tiamat does not need much encouragement. Killing her husband was endurable, but roiling her vitals is a step too far. You're supposed to ask before you do something like that to a lady. So she declares that she will make a storm of her own. When Tiamat heard these words, they pleased her. "As you have counseled, we will make a tempest. We will envelop the gods within it, for they have been adopting wicked ways against the gods, their parents." Tiamat then creates 12 monsters, her demonic army, to subdue her clamorous sons. The list of beasts she makes is repeated several times throughout the text. I'm just going to read it to you once here because this is YouTube and not an ancient New Year's festival. I wish. I don't want you to get bored. But know that if you measure textual importance by the number of repetitions, this is the most important image from the story. Mother Tiamat, who can form everything, added countless invincible weapons, gave birth to monster serpents, pointed of fang, with merciless incisors. She filled their bodies with venom for blood. Fierce dragons she clad with glories, causing them to bear auras like gods, saying, "Whoever sees them shall collapse from weakness. Wherever their bodies make onslaught, they shall not turn back." She deployed serpents, dragons, and hairy hero men, lion monsters, lion men, scorpion men, mighty demons, fish men, bull men, bearing unsparing arms, fearing no battle. Her commands were absolute. No one opposed them. 11 indeed on this wise she created. 11? I thought I said 12, like a perverted zodiac. She saved the verse for last. She raised up Kingu from among them. It was he she made greatest. Leadership of the army, command of the assembly, arming, contact, advance of the melee, supreme command in warfare, all she entrusted to him, made him sit on the dais. "I cast your spell. I make you the greatest in the assembly of the gods. Kingship of all the gods I put in your power. You are the greatest, my husband. You are illustrious. Your command shall always be greatest over all the Enuma gods." And here, we see what this fight is really about. Who's the greatest? Who gets to be king? Who sets the rules? She gave him the tablet of destinies, had him hold it to his chest, saying, "As for you, your command shall not be changed. Your utterance shall endure. The Tablet of Destinies is an inherited image from an earlier version of this myth, where the Anzu bird steals the Tablet of Destiny from the God King, along with his power to rule. The monster is slain by an upstart hero who resets the divine order. You can think of this image of slaying the monster to recover the law tablet as the great-great-grandmother image to Moses with the Ten Commandments and the golden calf. The text here is explicitly setting up Tiamat and her creatures as older usurpers to Marduk's new, rightful rule. Tiamat assembled her creatures, drew up for battle against the gods, her brood. Thereafter, Tiamat, more than Apsu, was become an evil doer. In a crucial development from the goddess's original role as a caring mother tolerating her children's clamor, she's had a serious change of heart. She's become evil. And now, all her sons and grandsons have to figure out what to do about it. When Grandfather Anshar heard the speech, the affair was confused. He cried out, "Woe!" He bit his lip. His spirits were angry. His mind was uneasy. His cries to Ea, his offspring, grew choked. "My son, you yourself were instigator of battle. Do you bear the consequences of your own handiwork? You went forth and killed Apsu, so Tiamat, whom you have enraged, where's one who can face her?" Luckily, Ea has a plan. He always does. The sage counselor, wise prince, producer of wisdom, divine Ea, Nudimud, answered his father Anshar gently, with soothing words, calming speech. "O Grandfather Anshar, inscrutable ordainer of destinies, who has power to create and destroy, I will declare my thoughts to you. Relent a moment. Recall, in your heart, that I made a good plan before I undertook to kill Apsu. Who had foreseen what is happening now?" Ea promises to subdue Tiamat, and his grandfather sends him off to battle. "Go then to Tiamat, subdue her onslaught. May her anger be pacified by your magic spell." When he heard the command of his grandfather Anshar, he set off, making straight his way. Ea went to seek out Tiamat's stratagem. He stopped, horror-stricken, then turned back. As soon as Ea sets off, he turns back. Tiamat is simply too powerful for him, but this is actually all according to Ea's plan. Like the wolf in the Three Little Pigs fable, Tiamat will huff and she'll puff, and she'll blow down 2 gods before being stopped by the third, Bel Marduk. Ea returns and says to his grandfather, "Grandfather, Tiamat has carried her actions beyond me. I sought out her course, but my spell cannot counter it. Her strength is enormous. She is utterly terrifying. She is reinforced with a host. None can go out against her. My father, do not despair. Send another to her. A woman's force may be very great, but it cannot match a man's." The text here is simple and explicit about why Tiamat is to be killed. The writers of the Enuma Elish believed that men were innately stronger than women, and so had a divine right to rule them. So, another patriarch god, Anu. He's sent to fight her. Of course, he'll be turned back too, because he's not our boy Marduk. Father Anshar was shouting in a passion to Anu, his son. He said these words, "Hurry, take a stand before Tiamat, soothe her feelings, let her heart be eased. If she will not listen to what you say something by way of entreaty to her, so that she will be pacified." When he heard what his father Anshar said, he set off, made straight his way. Anu went to seek out Tiamat's stratagem. He stopped, horror-stricken, then turned back. "My father, Tiamat has carried her actions beyond me. I sought out her course, but my spell cannot counter it. Her strength is enormous. She is utterly terrifying. My father, do not despair. Send another to her. A woman's strength may be very great, but it cannot match a man's." Anu repeats his son Ea's patriarchal claim, and then Ea repeats it to his son Marduk, urging him to fight Tiamat so that a woman would not rule over them all. The mighty firstborn, champion of his father, hastener to battle, the warrior Marduk did Ea summon to his secret place. Ea made his request, and Marduk said, "Let me go. Let me accomplish your heart's desire. What man is it who has sent forth in his battle against you? Why, Tiamat, a woman, comes out against you to arms? Soon you will trample the neck of Tiamat. Go, son, knower of all wisdom, bring Tiamat to rest with your sacral spell." So Marduk accepts his matricidal mission, and then all the gods are assembled to see him off to battle. But before Marduk leaves, he makes a great demand. If he is to kill Tiamat, then he must be made absolute king of all the gods, his authority unquestionable for all of eternity. If indeed I am to champion you, subdue Tiamat, and save your lives, convene the assembly, nominate me for supreme destiny. When I speak, let me ordain destinies instead of you. Let nothing that I shall bring about be altered, nor what I say be revoked or changed. A feast is then called, where the gods proclaim Marduk their king. Let them bring all the gods before me. Let them converse, sit down at a feast. On produce of the field let them feed, imbibe of the vine. Let them ordain destiny for Marduk, their champion. They swarmed together and came, all the great gods, ordainers of destinies. One kissed the other in the assembly. They conversed, sat down at a feast. On the produce of the field they fed, imbibed of the vine. With sweet liquor they made their gullets run. They felt good from drinking the beer, most carefree. Their spirits rose. To Marduk, their champion, they ordained destiny. The gods proclaim Marduk the most important god, unrivaled, command supreme, with the power to raise high and bring low. And if you're familiar with Jewish liturgy, you'll find their prayer to feel quite familiar. It's evocative of Vayirech David from the Book of Chronicles, recited each morning during Shacharit services. They're also especially similar to the sequence of images found in Unatana Tokef, recited each new year on Yom Kippur. There are actually quite a lot of relevant Hebrew parallels, so I'll put some of them on the screen as I recite the gods' elevation of Marduk in the Enuma Elish for your comparison. They set out for him a princely dais. He took his place before his fathers for sovereignty. You are the most important among the great gods. Your destiny is unrivaled. Your command is supreme. O Marduk, you are the most important among the great gods. Your destiny is unrivaled. Your command is supreme. Henceforth, your command cannot be changed. To raise high, to bring low, this shall be your power. Your command shall be steadfast. Your word shall not be misleading. No one of the gods shall go beyond the limits you set. Unlike the Hebrew prayers, which inherited some of these ideas, the elevation of Marduk is decidedly polytheistic. There are lots of other gods, with other shrines and other sanctuaries, but all of them are now inferior to Marduk and in need of his support. The gods consent to Marduk being venerated above them in all of their temples. Support is wanted for the gods' sanctuaries. Wherever their shrines will be, your own shall be established. O Marduk, you are our champion. We bestow upon you kingship of all and everything. Take your place in the assembly. Your word shall be supreme. Next, the gods give Marduk the symbols of kingship, scepter and throne, as well as the weapons he will need to kill the great goddess. Joyfully they hailed, Marduk is king! They bestowed in full measure scepter, throne, and staff. They gave him unopposable weaponry that vanquishes enemies. Go! Cut off the life of Tiamat. Let the winds bear her blood away as glad tidings. He made the bow, appointed it his weapon. He mounted the arrow, set it on the string. He took up the mace, held it in his right hand. Bow and quiver he slung on his arm. Thunderbolts he set before his face. With raging fire he covered his body. Then he made a net to enclose Tiamat within. He deployed the 4 winds that none of her might escape. South wind, north wind, east wind, west wind. He made ill wind, whirlwind, cyclone, 4 ways wind, 7 ways wind, destructive wind, irresistible wind. He released the winds that he had made, the 7 of them, mounting in readiness behind him to roil inside Tiamat. Then the Lord raised the deluge, his weapon. Marduk's weapons of choice are characteristic of storm gods: wind and lightning and flood. Once armed and ready for battle, he gets in his 4-horsed chariot and rides towards the goddess, while the gods, his fathers, cheer on. He mounted the terrible chariot, the unopposable storm demon. He hitched to it the 4-steed team. He tied them at his side. Slaughterer, Merciless, overwhelmer, soaring, their lips are curled back, their teeth bear venom, they know not fatigue, they are trained to trample down. He was garbed in a ghastly armored garment. On his head he was covered with terrifying auras. The Lord made straight and pursued his way towards raging Tiamat. He set his face. He was holding a spell ready upon his lips, a plant, antidote to venom he was grasping in his hand. At that moment, the gods were stirring about him. The gods, his fathers, were stirring about him. The gods stirring about him. Finally, after all this preparation comes the battle. While Marduk tries to pierce her with arrows and thunderbolts, Tiamat defends herself with a stereotypically feminine weapon, lies and deception. She tells Marduk that his subjects are rebelling. Sure, they said he was king, but did they mean it? They were lying. The Lord drew near to see the battle of Tiamat. Tiamat cast her spell point blank. Falsehood, lies she held ready on her lips. Lord, the gods rise against you. They assembled where they are. But are they on your side? Marduk does not believe her, and accuses her instead of being a bad mother and supporting a usurper king, Kingu. Children cried out. They oppressed their parents. But you, their own mother, spurned all natural feeling. You named Kingu to be spouse for you. Though he had no right to be, you set him up for chief god. You have perpetrated your evil against the gods, my fathers. Come within range. Let us duel, you and I. When Tiamat heard this, she was beside herself. She turned into a maniac. Tiamat shrieked, loud in a passion. Her frame shook all over, down to the ground. She was reciting an incantation, casting her spell. They locked in single combat, joining for the fray. The Lord spread out his net, encircled her. The ill wind he held behind him, he released in her face. At the peak of their combat, the language used evokes rape, cosmic violation. Beware, the language is quite graphic. Tiamat opened her mouth to swallow. He thrust in the ill wind so she could not close her lips. The raging winds bloated her belly. Her insides were stopped up. She gaped her mouth wide. He shot off an arrow. It broke open her belly. It cut to her innards. It pierced the heart. He subdued her and snuffed out her life. He flung down her carcass. He took his stand upon it. In what follows, Tiamat's body is systematically desecrated. Marduk claims the Tablet of Destinies, and with his new authority, he rips Tiamat's corpse in two and uses it to build himself a palace. As for the 11 creatures, the ones adorned with glories, and the demonic horde, which went in attendance at her side, he put on lead ropes. He bound their arms. He trampled them under, together with their belligerents. As for Kingu, who was trying to be great among them, he captured him and reckoned him among the doomed gods. He took away from him the Tablet of Destinies, which he had no right to. He sealed it with a seal and affixed it to his chest. Kingu's full punishment will come later. He will be sacrificed and his blood transfused into humanity. But first, Marduk has to creatively dismember Tiamat. Then, turned back to Tiamat, whom he had captured, the Lord trampled upon the frame of Tiamat. With his merciless mace, he crushed her skull. He cut open the arteries of her blood. He let the north wind bear it away as glad tidings. The Lord calmed down. He began inspecting her carcass, that he might divide the monstrous lump and fashion artful things. He split her in two, like a fish, for drying. Half of her he set up and made as a cover of heaven. Next, Marduk will use the mutilated pieces of Tiamat's body to create the heavens and the earth. He sets the stars in the sky and the planets in their orbits. He builds his sacred temple in heaven from her flesh. He made a counterpart to Apsu, the dwelling of Ea Nudimmud. The Lord measured the construction of Apsu. He founded the great sanctuary, the likeness of Ishara. In the great sanctuary, in Ishara, which he built, and in heaven, he made his fathers Ea, Enlil, and Anu dwell in their holy places. He made the positions for the great gods. He established in constellations the stars, their likenesses. He marked the year, described its boundaries. He set up 12 months, 3 stars each. Once the heavens are made, Marduk rips open Tiamat's chest, tears off her head, and builds the earth from her bones, her spittle, and her guts. The language is vivid. He opened up gates on both sides of her ribs. He made strong bolts to left and right. In her liver, he established the heights. He made the moon appear, entrusted to him the night, to make mists steam, to pile up her spittle as snow. He assigned to himself, put under his control. He set down her head and piled dirt upon it. He opened underground springs. A flood was let flow from her eyes. He undammed the Euphrates and Tigris. He stopped up her nostrils. He heaped up high-peaked mountains from her tits. He drilled through her water holes to carry off the catchwater. He coiled up her tail and tied it as the great bond. He set her crotch as the brace of heaven, spreading half of her as a cover. He established the earth. After he had completed his task inside Tiamat, he spread his net. He formed heaven and netherworld. I find this passage quite difficult to read, but I think it's important to repeat because it's iconic of the way that some of our more powerful ancestors thought of women's bodies. Tiamat's flesh is used, a trophy for the king. Her body's creative power is still very present. It's not clear if Marduk could have created heaven and earth without it, but her agency has been destroyed, and her fertility subjugated to the will of the king. This is probably the most bombastic and gruesome origin of patriarchy you will find in all of human literature. And it continues. All the Igi gods together prostrated before him, and the Enuna gods, all there are, were doing him homage. The whole of them joined together to pay him reverence. Before him they stood, they prostrated. This is the king! The text, again, describes Marduk in his royal regalia and mandates his presence in the shrines of all the other gods. With cedar oil he anointed his body. He clothed himself in his princely garment, the kingly aura, the awe-inspiring tiara. He picked up the mace, he held it in his right hand, the staff of success and authority he hung at his side. When they had given kingship over to Marduk, they said to him expressions of goodwill and obedience. Henceforth you shall be provider for our sanctuaries. Whatever you shall command, we will do. Marduk then proclaims that another house is needed, an earthly palace to match the heavenly temple he just built. This house, of course, is the city of Babylon.
A house I shall build. Let it be the abode of my pleasure. Within it I shall establish its holy place. I shall appoint my holy chambers. I shall establish my kingship. I shall call its name Babylon, houses of the great gods. We shall all hold festivals within it.
Here, the text is self-referential because obviously the festival Marduk is referring to is the Akitu festival, where the entire text of the Enuma Elish that I'm reading to you is read aloud in Marduk's temple in Babylon. The gods prostrated before him, saying, "Over all things that your hands have created, who has authority save for you? Over the earth that you have created, who has authority save for you? Babylon, to which you have given name, make our stopping place there forever. We will make a shrine whose name will be a byword, your chamber that shall be our stopping place. We shall find rest therein. We shall lay out the shrine. Let us set up its emplacement. When we come to visit you, we shall find rest therein." When Marduk heard this, his features glowed brightly, like the day.
Then make Babylon the task that you requested. Let its brickwork be formed. Build high the shrine.
They raised the head of Isagila, the counterpart to Apsu. They built the upper ziggurat of Apsu, his worldly palace now built. As a final act of creation, Marduk demands Kingu be sacrificed for his sins. His blood is compacted with his bones and reformed into humankind. Humans are then tasked to do all the world's labor so that the gods, after all this clamor, can finally rest. When Marduk heard the speech of the gods, he was resolving to make artful things.
I shall compact blood. I shall cause bones to be. I shall make stand a human being. Let man be its name. I shall create humankind. They shall bear the gods' burden, that those may rest. I shall artfully double the ways of the gods. Let them be honored as one, but divided in twain.
What Marduk commands must surely be done. Father Ea answered him, saying these words,
Let one, their brother Kingu, be given to me. Let him be destroyed so that people can be fashioned. Let the great gods convene in assembly. Let the guilty one be given up, that they may abide.
So the false king is sacrificed. They bound and held him before Ea. They imposed the punishment on him and shed his blood. From his blood he made humankind. That deed is beyond comprehension. By the artifices of Marduk did Nudimmud Ea create. And then, finally, after all the killing and all the creation, comes the celebratory feast. Marduk seated the gods, his fathers, for a banquet.
This is Babylon, your place of dwelling. Take your pleasure there. Seat yourselves in its delights.
The great gods sat down. They set out cups and they sat down at the feast. After they had taken their enjoyment inside it and in awe-inspiring Isagila had conducted the offering, all the orders and designs had been made permanent. All the gods had divided the stations of heaven and netherworld. He set out the royal throne that stood highest among the gods. They made Marduk's destiny highest. They prostrated themselves. They granted him exercise and kingship over the gods. They established him forever. And in conclusion, the gods conduct a naming ceremony, giving Marduk 50 new names that describe all his great deeds. And then they recite an epigraph, a prediction, or a spell perhaps, to ensure that Tiamat never returns from the dead. He shall maintain the motions of the stars of heaven. He shall herd all the gods like sheep. He shall keep Tiamat subdued. He shall keep her life cut short. In the future of humankind, with the passing of time, she shall always be far off. She shall be distant forever. Because he created the firmament and fashioned the netherworld, let them sound abroad the song of Marduk, how he defeated Tiamat and took kingship. Of course, the last words of the Enuma Elish would be kingship. It mirrors the meaning of the title, when on high. And the entire recitation was a sort of grand spell, recited every year by the high priest of Babylon to ensure that Marduk's eternal kingship would never be challenged again. And in some very significant ways, it hasn't been. While the Akitu festival has not been celebrated for 2,000 years, and the golden statue of Marduk was melted down long ago by some other warlord, the ideas contained in his liturgy about his unending rule are still very active in our religious imaginations today. Open any Siddur, and you will see the same claims made about Adonai. It's not a mystery how they got there. For almost all of our history, Jews have lived under foreign rulers. I imagine that for those Jewish exiles in Babylon, the idea that our Lord Adonai was higher than any other god or king offered some significant comfort. On the 5th day of the Akitu festival, a day after the Enuma Elish was read in its entirety before Bel Marduk, came a ritual which today we call the humiliation of the king. The king of Babylon and the high priest would go together into the Holy of Holies, where the statue of Marduk was housed. There, the king would be stripped. The priest would take the king's crown, his ring, his scepter, and his mace, and lay them down before Marduk. Now, disempowered, the priest would strike the king in the face, hard. He would force him to kneel, grabbing the king by the ear, pulling his head down, and in this position, the king would pronounce a negative confession, swearing that he had not sinned or harmed Babylon in any way. If he cried, Marduk would be pleased. When the king arrives at the temple of Bel Marduk, the elder brother will go out, and the scepter, ring, and mace he will lift up. He will lift up the crown of his kingship. He will bring them into the presence of Bel Marduk. In front of Bel Marduk, he will place them on the seat. He will go out and strike the cheek of the king. He will place the king behind him. In the presence of Bel Marduk, he will make him enter, and his ears he will pull. He will make him kneel to the ground. The king will say this once to Bel Marduk:
I have not sinned, Lord of the land. I have not neglected your divinity. I have not ruined Babylon, nor ordered its dissolution. I have not made Ezekiel tremble, nor forgotten its rights. I have not struck the cheek of the people of Babylon, nor brought about their humiliation. I have taken care of Babylon. I did not destroy its outer walls.
When he has struck the king's cheek, if his tears flow, Bel Marduk is favorably minded. If his tears do not flow, Bel is furious. The enemy will arise and bring about his downfall. The visual scene that this ritual would have produced is astonishing. In modern terms, it would be like looking at Donald Trump, shirtless, kneeling in front of the Lincoln Memorial, sobbing that he had not harmed anyone in America. What would you think? Can you imagine seeing that? What do you think our leadership would look like if ritual humiliation were part of their oath of office? And parts of this ritual do seem to be mirrored in Jewish liturgy. The Jewish New Year rites are the only services throughout the year where congregants are encouraged to bow low before the ark. And on Yom Kippur, we repeat a prayer called Vidui, confession. Part of that prayer reads: Maradnu, Niatznu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pasha'anu, Tsararnu. We have rebelled, we have blasphemed, we've revolted, we've been immoral, we have transgressed, we have oppressed. You'll notice here that the structure in the Vidui is specifically inverted from the negative confession in the humiliation of the king of Babylon. On Yom Kippur, Jews collectively confess to Adonai all the harms they have done. They do not deny to Marduk all the harms their leader has not done. Still, I have to imagine that the emotional impact of this sequence and its social function remain largely consistent from ancient Babylon to today. When you worship a god whose authority is unquestionable, you're compelled to be honest with yourself and acknowledge the harm you're capable of doing, whether you're the king of Babylon or not. The Enuma Elish shows us a mythology of divine authority near its absolute apex. Marduk achieved eternal dominion over all the other gods. The only way divine rule could possibly be more absolute is if those other gods had never existed in the first place. And this is the logical move that ancient Jews made in response to the bombast they would have been exposed to as refugees in exile. And when we elevated Lord Adonai to this even more authoritative position, any memory of his wife, his mother, the goddess that we once had, was systematically erased. Asherah did not even receive the dignity that Tiamat did of having a story told about her murder. But in this regard, I think that the end of the Enuma Elish is strangely hopeful, because gods and goddesses, even when killed, have a pernicious habit of returning from the dead. The Enuma Elish promises that Marduk shall keep Tiamat subdued. He shall keep her life cut short. In the future of humankind, with the passing of time, she shall always be far off. She shall be distant forever, which, as a concluding remark, means that the writers of the Enuma Elish believed that worship of Marduk was essential so that his divine authority could keep Tiamat at bay. But no one worships Marduk anymore. So what then of Tiamat? Well, as we saw in the beginning, despite her defeat, she did find her way into the opening verses of the book of Genesis. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, ve'haaretz hayita tohu vavohu ve'hoshech al panei tehom. When Adonai began creating heaven and earth, the earth was void and desolate. There was darkness on the face of the deep. Tehom. The word tehom shows up hundreds of times across Jewish liturgy and is deeply associated with our understanding of what it is to be divine. Even still, today, she is not as distant as those worshippers of Marduk would have hoped. Judaism became the religion that it is through a cosmic rejection. We rejected foreign kings. We rejected the gods of our oppressors. And in so doing, we rejected the goddess of our ancestors as well. In her place rose a divine authority strong enough to give us the traditions that we've inherited today, traditions resistant to both assimilation and genocide, but we lost something along the way. And it's only really possible to see that loss clearly by looking at religious traditions that are older than ours. Because there is continuity in these texts. Throughout this video, I've tried to highlight patterns that we've inherited from our Babylonian captors, whether we like it or not. They were just as enthusiastic about suppressing their goddess as we have been. But maybe, by reading their stories, we can give her another chance at life. Thank you so much for watching. This video is part of a class that I'm teaching on Bronze Age mythology. There are links in the description for the sources that I used in this video. The translation of the Enuma Elish was by Benjamin Foster, and the quotes about the Akitu festival are from the book called Of Priests and Kings, the Babylonian New Year Festival in the Last Age of Cuneiform Culture by Céline de Bourse. You can click on the subscribe button elsewhere if you want to see more videos like this one. Next week we will be reading the Baal cycle, which is the most direct ancestor to the book of Exodus from the city of Ugarit. I'll see you there.